Hey guys, Fox here, and today it's time to do the final regular season week review for the 2024 United Football League season. That's right, the regular season is now over, just a few days away from the playoffs, where we have the USFL and XFL Conference Championship games. But before we get to that, it's time to talk about the week review. How did each team do this past week, the final week of the regular season? How was the attendance and TV ratings for the final week? So, without further ado, let's just get right on into this, starting with the four scores of the week. We have the Panthers Stallions ending 2019 Birmingham, Battlehawks San Antonio ending 13-12, the Renegades Defenders game ending 32-31, and the Showboats Roughnecks game ending 19-12. This was an insanely tight week of games. Three separate games that weren't a one score, but a 1 point difference. And then one game that was a 7 point difference, which is still a one score game. So a very, very, very good week of close games, with the game's qualities being a mixed bag of each of them. So let's get started with talking about the Birmingham-Michigan game. Now, the Birmingham-Michigan game ended with Jake Bates missing a game-winning field goal. Many people agree, many people don't agree, but to me, I think that Jake Bates has potentially lost the Special Teams Player of the Year award because of him missing this field goal. The fact is his field goal percentage has been dipping week after week, and this was a very bad moment for him. Hopefully he can redeem himself in the playoff game against Birmingham, but this was a bad miss. But it wasn't just him and the reason why the Panthers lost. The fact is the Panthers' offense fully outplayed Birmingham's offense, except in one key crucial area, and that's the red zone efficiency, or better yet, just getting to the red zone. Michigan only got to the red zone one time and they didn't cash in, whereas Birmingham made it there twice and they scored both times. That was the biggest difference. The fact is, despite gaining over 100 more yards than Birmingham, Michigan, they dealt with a bunch of penalties, so self-inflicted wounds, and even though they had many more, sacks/TFLs than Birmingham, this wasn't enough. In the end, Birmingham did win this game despite not really playing that well. Martinez was better than last week, but it's not like he was, good last week, so it's not saying much. Ricky Person did not play, but Matt Colburn didn't play for Michigan, neither did Marcus Sims. So it's one of those things where it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle this next week. Bryce Perkins is put on the IR, sadly, but EJ Perry is back. Danny Etling will start, but it'll be interesting to see exactly how these two teams play, with a much more healthier roster. And because of that, if both teams play the way they did this past week, but get the guys that were hurt, Michigan should easily win the playoff game, but it's going to be interesting to see. So that was the first game. Now, the next game also ended on a missed last-second field goal, though not literal last second, but Ryan Santoso did miss a 51-yarder. It was one of those that was tipped, but it was a pretty good shot. It was going to miss anyway, so the tip didn't even really matter for sure, but they did lose. Santoso had another kick that got blocked earlier in the game, and of course there was the 2-point debacle where San Antonio scored it, then had an ineligible man downfield penalty, and then had another attempt where it was in the hands of the receiver, and then it was dropped, and all of that combined to make them lose the game. Despite outplaying St. Louis pretty handily, having almost 100 more total yardage, having less penalties and 2 less yardage, having better stats in regards to having 3 sacks and 7 TFLs versus 2 and 4. But the biggest difference, of course, is the fact that San Antonio had 2 turnovers, St. Louis had 1. And even though neither team got points off of them, the fact that one team had 2 was the biggest reason why San Antonio did lose. Yes, Chase Garbers got hurt. Yes, they were missing both their starting running backs. The fact is San Antonio was still the better team overall, yet in the end, St. Louis was able to do just enough to win the game with a little bit of luck from that missed reception, and of course the 2 Santoso botches, whether it be because of his missed leg and or his not super strong leg in the, first block, or the second where he just probably would have missed it anyway. In the end, though, St. Louis did get the W, just barely, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that playoff game rematch is, with an even rowdier crowd at home for St. Louis and a possibly healthier San Antonio team. Now, the third game of the week was the Renegades versus Defenders, and what was definitely the game of the week. Yeah, the game that had no importance whatsoever definitely was game of the week. Came a shootout, 32-31. Very weird shootout, though, because Arlington dominated in yards, having well over 70 more total yardage. In fact, it was just well more than DC, mainly because of the rushing game. Devion Smith had another really solid game, whereas nobody really had a good game on the ground for DC. Now, Arlington had 2 turnovers, and he had the insanely stupid Manigo play where Manigo got the ball at like the 1-yard line, then pulled it back into the end zone and got a safety, which gave DC 2 free points. So despite Arlington shooting themselves in the foot that many times, they still won. Yes, Arlington did still get the W. Luis Perez, despite having a very poor first half, came out and had overall a really solid game. Not a great game because of the 2 interceptions he threw early, but a very good game overall. 23 of 37 for 215, 3 TDs, 2 interceptions is still a really solid game when you consider how well he played in the second half. And he did outplay Teamu despite Teamu not throwing an interception. The fact is, Teamu's completion percentage once again was not good. And in the end, Arlington was the better team, and they did win it. If it wasn't for those self-inflicted wounds, they probably would have won this game handedly. But in the end, they still got the W. And then the final game was the Tank Bowl, or the Toilet Bowl, where the winner got the first overall pick, and the Showboats did end up winning. Despite having 120 less yardage, they got the W. Big reasons were both teams did get a turnover, but really, it's that Houston was 1 of 4 in the red zone. They could not convert in the red zone. They could not convert on 4th downs, failing 2 of them. When you combine both of those, it ain't going to be good for you. Yes, Justin Hall had a great game. He was able to tie for the reception crown this year. And Henderson really looked solid. And, saying that he's back next season, he would be a really solid QB for them to build around. But in the end, Josh Love did win despite not really playing all that great. He had a really solid completion percentage, but his, 152 yards and 20 completions is a really poor number, and 1 interception, 0 TDs ain't good either. In the end, I would say that Nolan Henderson did win the QB battle, but the red zone inefficiency is what ended up costing Houston and why they lost. Now, as for attendance, this final week was kind of what you expected. As a whole, it was pretty poor. Look, Memphis, 6,000. I mean, it's still better than their Week 6 number, but still not good. Birmingham dropped over 3,000 from their Week 8 game. Hopefully, they can rebound and have at least like 13K in the playoff game. And then St. Louis was solid. Their second best number of the season, 34,379. Unlike the last few weeks, which have actually been, by St. Louis's standards, poor weeks, this week was actually solid. This was better than their Week 9 or 10 game last year, and is overall a really solid number to see. Now, the playoff game is going to be interesting. A lot of people are hoping it hits over 40,000. Yes, having the tickets not go on sale till, like a week before because of, how close the race was isn't going to help. But in theory, it still should be a very, very, highly sold game. It still should hit over 40,000 since it is a playoff game in St. Louis. Overall, though, for attendance, it was pretty poor, again, with Birmingham and Memphis. DC did have a rebound, and this wasn't even like the crowd looked super empty. It was more filled than the last few times. Still, though, the 13,000 number isn't great. It is better than 3 of the weeks we saw last year, but it definitely did not really... I mean, it was better than their Week 7 game, but still, at least in distributed sold amount, is still their 4th highest or 2nd to lowest this season. So overall, you had 1 really solid number with St. Louis, 1 number with DC, and then 2 poor numbers with Birmingham and Memphis. Now, as for the TV ratings, this was actually pretty decent. Look, the Fox game with the Tank or the Toilet Bowl, no shock. Now, before we talk about it, yeah, I know the peak was really high, but of course that was only because of what was going on afterwards. We all know that. But the 650,000, it still technically is still better than the Birmingham-Memphis game that was going on last year in 2023 for the USFL, and it was only a bit worse than the Stars-Panthers game that went on at a very similar time slot, 7 p.m. on Sunday. But the ratings were all really solid. We had a 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, and a 0.4, which all either match or surpass everything that either other league had, with the only exception being the DC-San Antonio game, which is a 0.5 rating. But overall, you have the Birmingham-Michigan game was actually like top 5 in cable ratings during the time, which is really good to see for that 18 to 49 demographic, which is really huge. And the 750,000 on ESPN is a really good number. That almost matches the Orlando-St. Louis game last year at 12 p.m. with the XFL, and actually does surpass the Roughnecks Renegades game on April 23rd of Sunday. Now, it also is better than any number the USFL had on Sunday. Now, the ABC number's 890,000 is also better than the ABC number that DC San Antonio had by 600,000, and is better than any broadcast that the USFL had either. And so when you look at it like that, it was really a solid week. Yes, the ESPN number basically was a wash to the XFL's ESPN number, but the Fox low number still was able to match the Fox low number from the USFL, but the ABC and Fox numbers both did technically beat out every game either league had last year. So overall, this was still a very successful week of TV numbers, especially because while it's not going to be a massive change, there was still that 1 hour issue where the Michigan-Birmingham game overlapped to the San Antonio-St. Louis game. And depending how much you believe people watch these just because of the channel they're on or whatever, it's very real to say there's definitely at least potentially 50 to 100,000. Well, I wouldn't say that much, but probably around 50K at least that didn't actually get attributed because of the fact that you had that, hour time difference. Is it that much? Maybe, maybe not, but it is still something to note that there definitely is a higher amount for both games had they not been at, with the 1 hour overlap. Still, though, a very solid week of TV numbers. Definitely a good way to end the regular season. So that'll do it. This has been Zom Fox. If you enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as I upload any videos. Think about supporting the channel by becoming a channel member for as low as 99 cents a month. You get an exclusive video every month, as well as a bunch of other benefits. And as always, guys, have a great night.